Well, as I alluded to, we are continuing our fall sermon series, Women of the Book, looking at these remarkable women of integrity, intelligence, character, courage from the Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament. And today we're looking at the story of Abigail. Now, Abigail is truly amazing. We read her story in 1 Samuel 25, and we'll get to that in a moment, where the Bible describes her as intelligent and beautiful. Now, unfortunately, she was married to a sorry, good-for-nothing man named Nabal, who made his living raising sheep. He is described in the Bible as surly and mean in his dealings. And then we're going to enter King David, but before he was king. So just David, he and his band of renegades had been hanging out in the wilderness, hiding from King Saul, who was trying to kill David. He was jealous, thinking that David was going to take over the throne. Now, in their wanderings, David and his entourage, they encountered Nabal's flocks and shepherds. Now, since they were an army of fighting men camping out in the wilderness with nothing to do, they decided to keep their skills sharp by guarding Nabal's sheep from thieves. So they're doing a good thing for Nabal, right? When the shearing time came, David sent a message to Nabal, asking if he would send over just a few legs of lamb, in gratitude for their protection. Nabal sent David's messengers packing, hurling insults at them with some pretty foul language. The Bible doesn't record exactly what Nabal said, but when the messengers repeated his words to David, David became enraged. So David mustered his troops and prepared to destroy Nabal and all of his household. And this is where Abigail shines in the pages of our scripture and in the pages of history. And so we will read 1 Samuel chapter 25, verses 14 to 35. If you'd like to follow along, you can find it on page 269 of your red pew Bible. But one of the young men told Abigail, who is Nabal's wife, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he shouted insults at him. Yet the men were very good to us, and we suffered no harm, and we never missed anything when we were in the fields, as long as we were with them. They were a wall to us, both by night and by day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. Now, therefore, know this and consider what you should do. For evil has been decided against our master and against all of his house. He is so ill-natured that no one can speak to him. Then Abigail hurried and took 200 loaves, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep ready dressed, 5 measures of parched grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs. She loaded them on donkeys and said to her young men, "Go on ahead of me. I'm coming after you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal. As she rode on the donkey and came down under cover of the mountain, David and his men came down towards her, and she met them. Now David had said, "Surely it was in vain that I protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belonged to him. But he has returned me evil for good. God do so to David and much more also, if by morning I leave so much as one male of all who belong to him." Now when Abigail saw David, she hurried and alighted from the donkey, fell before David on her face, bowing to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "Upon me alone, my lord, be the guilt. Please let your servant speak in your ears and hear the words of your servant. My lord, do not take seriously this ill-natured fellow Nabal, for as his name is, so is he, Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your servant, did not see the young men of my lord whom you sent. Now then, my lord, as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, since the Lord has restrained you from blood guilt and from taking vengeance with your own hand, now let your enemies and those who seek to do evil to my lord be like Nabal. And now let this present that your servant has brought to my lord be given to the young men who follow my lord. Please forgive the trespasses of your servant, for the Lord will certainly make my lord a sure house, because my lord is fighting the battles of the Lord, and evil shall not be found in you so long as you live. If anyone should rise up to pursue you and seek your life, the life of my lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living under the care of the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies he shall sling out from the hollow of a sling. When the Lord has done to my lord according to all that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you prince over Israel, my lord shall have no cause of grief or pangs of conscience for having shed blood without cause, or for having saved himself. And when the Lord has dealt well with my lord, then remember your servant. Well, David said to Abigail, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you to meet me today. Blessed be your good sense, and blessed be you, who have kept me today from blood guilt, and from avenging myself by my own hand. For as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, who has restrained me from hurting you, unless you hurried and come to meet me, truly by morning there would not have been left to Nabal so much as one male." Then David received from her hand what she had brought him. He said to her, "Go up to your house in peace. See, I have heeded your voice, and I have granted your petition." What a story. You can't make these stories up, right? Intelligent woman married to the opposite kind of guy. David being very hot-headed and young in his youth, wanting revenge. The story of Abigail displaying great courage, willing to risk her own life, and great humility, taking the blame and the guilt on her for actions that her husband had made. Abigail, quick thinking and resourceful. As we read, she piled bread and meat and raisin cakes. They were very specific with all that she brought. She piled them onto donkeys and headed out to meet David. As we read, when she saw him, she dismounted quickly. She bowed her face to the ground. And as we read, she, in her wisdom, affirmed David's calling as future king. Now, we know from earlier scriptures that the prophet Samuel had told David, one day, you will be king. King Saul didn't like that, hence King Saul was trying to kill David. But Abigail knew of this. She believed it. And so she affirmed to David, who is hiding in the wilderness, afraid of his own life, unsure of his own future, Abigail, at this vital time in his life, assured young David that God was with him. God was for him. God had a future for him that would result in him being the leader of all of Israel. So she calls that out. She also begs for forgiveness for her husband's folly, which is what the word Nabal means. The translation is fool, basically. So it's true. And she says, as his name is, so he really is. I'm not sure who would have named their child Fool, but, I've heard some strange names in the past, but not that one. And then Abigail pleaded with David to spare her family, including her husband. We read that David accepted her eloquent and humble plea, and he received the food that she brought for all of David's men. Now, what we read is 10 days after this encounter, Nabal dies by natural causes. When David heard of Nabal's demise, Well, he wasted no time. He promptly asked Abigail to marry him because he saw something in her, qualities in her, of faith, of courage, of strength, of humility, of great wisdom that he knew he needed in his life. And perhaps without her in his life, he would have never really gone on to fulfill the Lord's plans for him and for Israel. So Abigail is a remarkable woman of character and courage. And with great humility, she was willing to do whatever it took to prevent a disaster and to protect and save lives. And in this situation, it was asking David, putting herself out there and asking. Similar to what Jody did, asking our congregation for help, to help save and protect lives, give children and youth a future, a home. That's what people like Abigail and Jody and others do. It's what the Department of Children and Families in Morrisville does. As we heard, their mission is to foster the healthy development, the safety and well-being, self-sufficiency of all Vermonters, but especially to be able to provide services and support in the home for children and youth in need, so that their future can be secure, placed on a firm foundation of care and love. Abigail, like so many who I see in this sanctuary, her heart was compassionate, her mind was clever, and her actions were decisive. Abigail carried herself with dignity and integrity despite her circumstances. We read she probably wasn't married to a very supportive, understanding man. But yet, in spite of that, she held herself with dignity and pride. And when the lives of those around her were placed in jeopardy, Abigail leapt into action in order to save them. In fact, we read 3 times in the story the adjective quickly or hurried, alighted. She was decisive, action-oriented. All of those displayed her wisdom. She was proactive, and her actions were life-giving. And though Abigail faced seemingly impossible circumstance, the possible demise of her entire family, the odds were stacked against her. Now, I don't know if any of you ever feel like that the odds are just stacked against you, that the situation you're facing is just too much. It's insurmountable. Maybe you're not afraid of your actual lives, but there are families around our world who every day wake up not knowing if they will make it another day. But maybe your situation is more personal or financial, relational. And it just seems like there's no way out. There's no way forward. There's no way through. The gospel in this story is that with God and God's Spirit and God's wisdom, we can see differently. We can see possibilities. We can see hope and light even in dark situations. You think about Abigail. She gets this message. David, who will be king, and his men are going to destroy everything because of the actions of your husband. That's dire. That seems hopeless. Seems very dark. But Abigail wasted no time. She had strength and courage and faith. She took action. And clearly, God used her. David even said, "Blessed are you. The God of Israel sent you to me. because I needed to hear what you said." And he thanked her, not only for saving her family, for saving himself, from himself. The world needs more people like Abigail. We know that. And Esther, for such a time as this. From this one woman of the book, we discover the impact of one person's wisdom, one person's courage and action, and the impact it has on the family, on a group of people, and on a future national and global leader whose whole path would have been different if it were not for Abigail. And the courage, the strength, the humility, and the wisdom that she displayed. So may her example inspire all of us when we too face challenging decisions and difficult situations ahead of us. Like Abigail, may we have the good sense to be proactive in following God's lead, to be a blessing to others, now and always. Amen.